Hi, familiar faces from the last session, so that's great. Thanks for coming along and tagging. You must have read the session slide and was like, yes, I'm going to that one. So here we are. We're going to talk about the modernizing our user experience for the interop layer. I am joined by Carmen Logue, who's product manager, and Elle, who's our senior UX designer. She's done great work on the UIs, so we're really excited to have you take a look at that in this session and in the UX lab. So I'm not going to stress enough that the UX lab is the place to be this year, so I hope to see you there. We're also joined by a few of our customer users we'll introduce you at a later point when we get to your section. But we're really excited to have this kind of partnership with the different organizations that have helped us out in building this. So for the agenda today, we'll give you a little bit about the project itself if you're a little bit new to it, and Elle is going to talk about the design principles, so a little bit of the work that goes into understanding how to develop something for particular users, and so it's really interesting stuff, so I hope you all enjoy that. Then we're going to talk through very specific use cases of designing the UI, so problem areas that we found we needed to address in the current designs and how we develop the solutions for those. By we, I really mean Elle, so really excited for her to present her work. And then we're going to open it up to our customer panelists. We'll have a few questions, but we want to also engage you all. So as we're moving along through the content, please come up with questions for us and our panelists. Here's really your time to get to know kind of this process. And then, of course, get you excited for the rest of the content already. Here's another introduction, and our face is pretty big in case you can't see us. Really important. And our customer panelists. So we have representation from UC Davis, Schiller Americas, and Wexner Medical Center at Ohio State. So what is interoperability? In case you all weren't aware what it is. So I wanted to have something fun here to show, and there's this little comic here that says, you're in a situation where you don't know how to interact with different types of data. How do you interoperate and normalize your data? So we have two people kind of arguing, like, why do we have 14 different data standards? We should just use one. So the solution that we all kind of agreed to is just having, instead of 14, 15 new standards. So I felt like we could all relate to that as we try to keep up with the times and try to speak the same language. I think we're still trying to figure that out today. So what that really means in the back end and technically making sure your data flow and integrations are successful, sticking to schemas and standards instead of customizations, and orchestrating your business logic to get the data to the right places. So this is kind of what interoperability is all about. And now I'll hand it off to Carmen to talk about some of the motivations of the project.
Great, yeah, and for those of you who were in our lunch right before this, some of this you've seen, but I'm going to talk a little bit more about it. This project is really part of kind of an overall project to look at the user interfaces that our customers use, primarily from the system management portal, and to start creating strategies around that. And there's several different motivators for that. It's something that we've been actively working on for quite a while, but you'll see that I say there, starting with interoperability. So several years ago, we started looking at our interoperability user experience, understanding those workflows, but I think just as by way of summary as what we are doing in general is that we are looking at all those different user types that use the system management portal. So that includes system administrators, interoperability engineers. It's really designed as kind of an all-in-one shop. And what we're looking at now is what are the best ways for us to deliver those experiences to customers. So that could be through new UIs, it could be through APIs, CLI, building on our experience with configuration files. All of those things are things that we're actively working on. And as I said, what we looked at several years ago was the user experience for interoperability. And one of the things that we learned very quickly, and Elle's, I think, going to give some examples of this, is that there was a fair amount of kind of going back and forth within the system management portal to complete certain tasks and certain jobs. So looking, if you were using the UI for this work, it was going in and looking for configuration, doing things like that where you were kind of walking through a lot of different screens to accomplish tasks. And so that's something that we took very seriously and worked on to try and make that a better experience, and are working on that. The other thing that we did at that time was to look at what we called the high design screens. So there's about 6 screens that have a lot to them, and that's where we chose to start. So it's all of your editors, right? It's the message viewer and visual trace. Those are the big ones. And we came up with this sort of quadrant of different workflows, and we've really been focused initially here on the build and configure workflows. And so that's where we've been focused on the 4 main editors, getting that into shape with the new UI. And now we're very actively in that right quadrant, the monitor and troubleshoot. So we're actively working right now on message viewer, visual trace. So those are interesting, challenging areas, but I think we're making some great progress there. The other thing I should mention about this project is that's really important is that it's not a straight line. We've been going back and getting feedback from people as we do this, and you'll see it still as an opt-in experience for that purpose, because we know we have a lot of customers who just rely on these every day, and so we want to make sure that we are taking that feedback into consideration as we iterate through these screens and through these experiences. So that's something that we're taking extremely seriously. And just around timeline, we've got here we started actually the research for this back in 2023. Stefan probably remembers it. And then in 2024, we made these opt-in available from Health Connect Cloud. Starting with 25.1, we made our new experiences, and these were some of the editors, production config and DTL editor primarily. We made those available as opt-in. That was very early days with those screens. We were able to get a lot of good feedback by having it there in 25.1. And I think there's a pretty substantial change in some of those initial screens between 25.1 and 26 based on a lot of your feedback and the people that are sitting here as well. In 26.1, we completed going through all the editors. So we've got at least a first version of all the editors, starting with 26.1. Again, doing this as opt-in. We are going to, with that experience, look at brand new users, so users who have not had training yet, and starting them in these new UIs. Now, obviously, everything that hasn't been transitioned yet will still be in that old UI, but we're experimenting in a number of ways with this. In 27, we're really working through, I think, a lot of those troubleshooting experiences. We've got early versions of Message Viewer in 26.1, but there's a lot of work going on right now in Message Viewer and Visual Trace. So that's kind of where we are in our journey. Again, wanted to just make sure that this is something we're iterating on pretty heavily, always looking for your feedback and moving customers as they're ready. What we've done, this is an eye chart, but I wanted to include it here as a kind of a reference for the things that we've done, just so you get a scope of the variety of things that we've been working on. 2 things that I will call out here. One is in 26.1, and this is thanks to the second Scott there. One of the things we learned was that very large productions didn't visualize very well in 25.1, and so we were able to address that in 26.1. And I think the other thing I'll call out here is performance improvements on message search. That's something that's very active right now. This is something that you should see advantages here, whether you're using the new UIs or the existing UIs. So as we're going through this and looking at things that we want to do and new experiences that we want to deliver, we're also looking at sort of some of those back-end improvements too. So there's a lot of front-end work, but there's also a lot of back-end work, new APIs in some cases, and also some fundamental changes. So I think a lot to look forward to. Big project, a lot of exciting things there. A number of our developers who are working on that are here this week as well. you can meet them if you come to the Interoperability Lab. All right, and with that, I believe, one more. Okay. So this is looking at some of the research that we've done, just to give you a sense of kind of the scope of what we've been doing. We've done, I think, well, we say here 90 plus interviews. It feels like more than that, actually. But we've done a lot of different interviews with individuals. Elle's been at Ready, and before that, Global Summit. This is probably the fourth year. So if you haven't seen her in the Tech Exchange, you still have a chance to do that this year. To go through with people whatever it is that we're working on at the time. So that's been something different every year. And we've also done 3 in-person visits as well. So many of these interviews are remote, of course, but we've actually done some site visits at 3 different organizations. And that's great for us because we kind of see how things work in the real world, right? At a customer site, and we're able to spend time and kind of go through pain points and that kind of thing. So this is all just a big recruiting thing to say, if this is something you're interested in, please talk to us, because we are continuing to do this kind of research. All right. And with that, I will turn it over to Elle, who's going to talk about what it means to be involved in this UX research.
I got this one here. Okay. I'm going to stand while I do this, and I apologize because there are 2 screens, so I have to pick one screen. So I'll pick this screen. So we talked a lot about how when we're doing the redesign of this product, we really want it to be customer feedback driven. So I just want to talk a little bit about what that means and what that looks like, and how we take that feedback and turn that into a new feature. And I'll do that by going through 3 different examples. So the first example is a concept that was released in 25.1, so it's already out in the wild. The second example is a concept that has been released, but we didn't nail it. So we are still in the process of figuring out how to make it better. And then the last concept is something that is going to be in the near future. And the biggest takeaway I want you to have from this is that you have influence over how Interop is redesigned. So you might just feel like you're one voice, but your one voice could match with 10 other people, and you might not even know it. There's also a saying that people like to use in the UX world, that if you are having someone over and they trip on your rug, you notice it, and then if you have a second person come over and they trip on the rug in the same exact place, you might start to think, that rug is a problem, I should probably tape down that rug. You're not going to wait for 100 more people to trip on that rug. Unless you're my manager, who says it depends on how funny it was when they tripped over the rug. So just being able to hear that customer voice, even just a few times, and understand the seriousness of a problem is enough for us to address it in some cases. So please speak up if you're a customer. We always want to hear from you. So starting with the first example. So this is the example of the expandable router. This concept was released in the 25.1 version. And what it is it takes a process host in the production configuration, and there's a little button where you can expand it, and you can see all of the rules and DTLs that are within that router. And you can see a breakdown of where those connections are sending to. So you can see each individual DTL and the outbound that it's sending to. So how we arrived at this feature was we started by listening. So we actually sit down with customers and we actually look at what they're doing on their computer to better understand what their workflows are, what kind of environment they're working in. We just want to understand the full context of the problem. So I'll ask something like, what's an example of something going wrong? What do you do next to troubleshoot the problem? And I saw something like this from a lot of people. So let's say you are not getting any messages in a certain outbound host. You're not really sure why, so you want to see what's connected to it. So you look at the production configuration, you click on that host, you see all of the routers connected to it, and then you'll click on that little magnifying glass on the side to open that router in a new tab. And then you'll see all of the DTLs, and you might want to check out a specific DTL, so you'll double click it to open that in a new tab. You might decide, okay, now I want to change something in the DTL. So you might think, where else is this DTL being used? I want to make sure that if I'm making a change, that it's not going to affect anything else. So you will reroute back to Interoperability, to the system management portal. You'll click View, you'll click Interface Maps, you'll open the interface map in a new tab, and you'll search for the DTL. So something that we notice with all this is these are a lot of new tabs opening, and these are a lot of clicks happening, and a lot of different places that you have to go around the application in order to figure out what you're trying to figure out. So we thought, what if more of this information were available up front? What if we centralize this information so that you didn't have to go all over the product to find what you're looking for? And this was the first mock-up that came out of the attempt to answer that problem. So what you're seeing here is a version of the production configuration in mock-up form. And you have a column with your inbound hosts, a column with your routers, a column with your outbounds, but then all of the DTLs and all of the rule sets so that you could see the lines going from each individual item. So I took this mock-up and I also brought this to customers. And I have customers take a look at it, I have them play around with it, ask them what they think of it. And this was some of the feedback I got. There is way too much stuff going on. This is too much information. I don't want to see this stuff all the time. But people said it is nice having a visual of all these connections. So the takeaway from there is some information that is really helpful, but it's only helpful in certain moments. So that's what led to the final concept of the expandable router. So everything is just tucked away, nice and neat, but when you do want to see that visual mapping of everything, you can expand that router, and then you can see the breakdown of all of those connections. So this is why a collaborative voice matters. So there's lots of ways to give us feedback. You could drop us a note. You could submit something to the WRC. You could put something in the ideas portal, and we look at all of it, and all of that is really important. But I just want to note here that that feature came about through direct observation and interviews. And it came about not because someone specifically said, hey, what if you make the router expandable and then have all of the rule sets and DTLs underneath it? No one said that. If you were thinking it though, I want you to come talk to me and help me redesign the rest of this. But yeah, no one said it, but what we saw was the struggle that people had, having to go through the whole entire product to find this information, having to click and open multiple tabs. And we wouldn't have been able to fully understand that problem unless we observed people in action. So moving on to the second example. So this is the example that I said we haven't quite nailed yet. And the harder the problem, the more iteration and feedback is needed. So that means the more customer touch points that we need to have, because as we're going through multiple rounds of mock-ups and trying to converge on the right idea, we need customer interaction that whole entire journey. So the concept is the line redesign, just as a general concept. And this came about because in the older version, a lot of people mentioned it would be really nice to see the full path that a message could take. So we click on an inbound, but then it stops at the router. So you want to see where that's going, you have to click on the router again. If it's going to another router, you have to click on that router, and then you can finally see the outbound. So we said, that sounds great, but what if there are hundreds of connections? What if you have an ADT router that's going to 100 other routers, that's going to 200 other outbounds? That starts to get really messy, and there's a lot of lines. So initially, we thought we could clean it up. Maybe we could have just one area of overlap where all of these lines would just be on one clean track. If you hover over them, it will bold that line and single it out. But we were learning that it's way too hard to trace a path. It's really hard to see at a glance what's happening. You know that there's chaos happening, you know that there's hundreds of connections, but you can't see it. So it's not helpful in drawing an accurate representation of your production. So the challenge here is, how can we balance showing the full path while still allowing customers to discern between the lines? So it's back to interviewing customers and talking and trying to understand what are the problems that they're trying to solve. So an example of something that I asked is, give me an example of an issue where you would want to use the production configuration lines to visualize something you're troubleshooting. And I heard a lot of, we want to be able to see which rules in that router are sending to that operation. It's too difficult to see with the overlapping lines. I really want that information up quickly. So there's a theme here. What kind of information do you want up front, and what information is okay to drill down into? So I will show you the concept that has kind of evolved from this, but it is in progress. We need feedback to continue, and you can give me that feedback by finding me at the Tech Exchange every day. We have a UX table, and I'll be there starting 3:30 today for the rest of the week. So here's kind of the idea. Putting more space between the different columns, the different host columns, and putting in more visual separation. Now again, you could have a lot of lines. There will be a lot going on in this space if we're able to see the full path of lines. So having the option to do a drill down like this. So if I want to just see that specific path that goes from inbound ADT 1 to process WML 3, you can click on that and it will dim the non-viable paths. It will leave the viable paths still dark, and they're all still clickable. And you can continue drilling down from there if there's a specific path you want to narrow in on. So that's another click, and then more lines will get dimmed away as those non-viable paths become apparent. And then again, another click, and now everything is dim, and then you can go ahead and hide the dim lines, and now you've just traced one single path that a message could take. So then on to the third example. Looking forward, we want to challenge the way things were done in case there's a better way. And this example here is with the visual trace. And we know people really like the visual trace. We don't really want to change it drastically because it's working for people. So we do want to add to it a little bit and enhance it. And one of the ways of doing that is organizing by resend groupings. So you have your original message that was in the session with all the messages downstream, and that will be visually grouped together. Any resends after that will also be in their little grouping. So that first resent message and all the messages downstream, and so on for how many resends you have in that session. And this one also came about from observing and interviewing, and it was actually a little more subtle. So people were showing us how they troubleshooted in the visual trace, and I noticed they were saying, hold on, let me scroll through this whole session. I need to find the resend. It's at the very end, and now I need to find the one that was starting the whole resend. It was being lumped together with other stuff. So I just noticed that they were having trouble and spending a lot of time scrolling to get to the right place. And the thing about the visual trace is it's chronological. So if you send a message and you're expecting a response, that response might be delayed, and by the time you may have resent another message, that response is now overlapping with the previous response. But when you group by resend, now we can visually lump all these things together. So you don't have as much overlap, and you can more accurately see that this is all part of that original message, this is part of this resend, these messages are related. And then you can switch back and forth if you want to do the chronological version or the group by resend version. And then we'll number the resend, so you can see how many messages, how many times you've resent in that specific session. So those are my three examples. This is how we took customer feedback, specifically from interviews and observation, and how we use that feedback to continue to evolve the design and develop new features. So I hope this inspires you to come check out the table or come reach out to us. We'd love to work with some new faces, and we can show you mock-ups of what we're doing, and it will help us a lot as we continue with designing the product.
All right. Thank you, Elle. I hope that was well received. Were you guys excited about all those use cases? Could you relate to them? Yeah, great. All right. So we're going to go into our next portion of today is the user panel. So thank you all for joining us on the table. So we've got Scott Nathanson from UC Davis, Gianfranco Icona, he says it a lot more eloquently than I do, from Schiller Americas, and Scott Roth from Wexner Medical Center. So if you all could just take a few seconds to just kind of introduce who you are and maybe how your breadth of knowledge within the InterSystems products or your years of use.
Sure. Hi there, my name is Scott Nathanson. I'm with UC Davis Health System. I've been working there for 21 years. I've been working on InterSystems, which started off as Ensemble since 2009. So it's at 17 years now with that product.
Hi, I'm Scott Roth. I'm with OSU Wexner Medical Center. I've been in integration for about 22 years now. Been working with InterSystems for about 10, on and off.
Hi, so I'm Gianfranco Iacona, also known as John. I've been working with InterSystems for about a year now, leading an initiative to enable early intervention windows powered by ECG data longitudinally available across patients. In my day-to-day, I deliver HL7 interfaces in both acute and ambulatory care environments for both cardio and pulmonary devices.
Thank you. So as you can tell, we have a varied experience level on InterSystems products, but all of you guys are super users. I mean, you've passed the HL7 interface exam, which is like, wow. So they know their stuff. So I have a few questions that I'm going to ask the panelists in an order, but I do have a slide here that if you scan, it leads you to a question. So if at any point, or if you already have questions, you could submit them through that app, and depending on the question, we may or may not answer them. So go ahead and if you already have a question, start to do so, and we'll see those pop up on the screen. But my first question to our panelists, who, by the way, each has had a different experience with our team in terms of the type of interaction that we've had. So for Scott Nathanson, we did an on-site with UC Davis. So we met with his team. We got to know kind of their workflows and how they hand off certain tasks to each other, which helped us out quite a bit in understanding, who does what in the system and how does information need to be presented. So that was a very critical, on-site for us. Scott Roth, we've done multiple interactions with, and he's had a ton of influence in understanding users as well as super users. So he's been very dear to this project, and we appreciate him so much. And for Gian, we've had just one session, but I could really tell that he was very passionate about making sure, the mind of the user was, taken into account when we build these experiences. So we will continue to talk to you as we build more workflows. So we're very happy for you all to be here. So my very first question is, what motivated you to do this? So obviously we have our motivations. Why did you want to join this project?
Sure. So we had two motivations. First off, it's really exciting to be able to see the new features early on and just see what's coming up. But also, we've had experiences where we've seen a feature or expected a feature to come out, and then once it was delivered, it wasn't quite what we were expecting. And so, being able to provide early feedback and get that get that input and maybe get a feature that actually works better for us was really a key motivator for us.
For me, it was more, we came from the eGate shop. So when we moved to InterSystems, we saw a lot of things that just, over time, I hear our users asking for things or looking for certain ways for things to work. So this is a great opportunity to give feedback. I've been working with Elle for the 4 years that she's been going to conference, and I sit down with her like every time and might spend an hour with her or more. So it's a great chance to give feedback, get ideas into their head about what we are experiencing as users, what our users are experiencing.
Sure. So primary motivator for participating in this project was being able to be part of the vision that shapes this product. As more and more messages flow through IRIS, there's an entire community of people that need to be addressed because we're the ones that are behind the curtain, making sure those messages are getting delivered and making sure that those messages conform. I think it's so important to represent our ideas in terms of product development, and I wanted to take the initiative to be a part of this.
Great, thank you. You feel free to be as honest as possible in this next question. Did you feel more like a partner or a tester in this process?
Well, I felt like it was both, really. I mean, in the one hand, we got to see something new. We got to, there were some scenarios that were presented that allowed us to test through a feature, and then we actually got a lot of interaction to be able to provide that feedback.
I think the same for me. Getting that interaction, having the ability to have input into something that's going to make not only our company better, other people better. Sometimes it's better to think outside the black box. Maybe I'm thinking something different than Scott's thinking there, or So it's a great opportunity to give the feedback.
Yeah, in terms of testing versus really using, I think there's twofold of it. The initiative itself, giving feedback when you have frustration about a product, is something that a lot of engineers we simply aren't exposed to. I think in terms of testing, being part of the feedback loop, that's definitely how I would relate to it. However, in terms of using the platform, I would definitely say I'm on the user side in my day-to-day.
Yeah, thank you. All great stuff. We did get some questions, so we're going to start reviewing them. I realized I'm not going to be able to show them because I'm not on my version of PowerPoint, but we do see your questions, so we'll get to those. My next question is around what do you think we could have done more of in the interactions that we've had with you, or less of?
Ooh, not sure. I mean, we were in a unique situation since you came on site, and I think that we had some of our users that were on site, some of them that had to work remotely, and I think those were two very different experiences. I think on site was great because we could have someone come down, sit with us. We could show them, oh yeah, here's this, work back and forth. It was very interactive. I think that was lost a little bit with some of our remote users, but it might have been mitigated some more if we were able to have like a dedicated session just for the remote users.
True.
For me, it was probably, because I'm relating wants and needs for my users. But for me, I mean, just at the sessions alone that I've spent with Elle, having more time. I mean, there was times where we've gone 2-3 hours, even into the night. I mean, just having that time availability to give the feedback.
I think an impressive aspect of having the conversations with the UX team is how deep they're willing to go into something that makes you frustrated. Not only depth, but also horizontally. So you can have a thought that lingers in a certain direction and they'll follow you. In a lot of ways, that's something that's very impactful because it helps you also reason from the product side, but also from the user side. And you almost always find a different angle and a reason why things were done a certain way. Now, in terms of how things develop, I think these kinds of sessions are really important, and how we would be able to have even more from these kinds of sessions is maybe having also walkthroughs where we see UX redefining how much time it takes to do something, having those measurements and being able to present that as well.
That would be nice. It's very hard to do because, as you can tell, there are multiple ways of doing similar things in interoperability. So, but that's an area we are trying to address to make more intuitive what you need to do and how you need to do it. I will get to my last question, but there was a question that we received that I believe are for our panelists, which is it worth doing any form of custom alerting, things like SMS alerting and detailed alerts based off of an operation or service?
I am doing a presentation tomorrow on alerting, so show up for that. But yeah, I think there is a lot of opportunity for alerting.
For me, out of the box, we had to develop our own alerting, and so I'm interested to see how you guys have done, how UC Davis has done it. But there are needs that that could be addressed through alerting that I would highly recommend.
For alerting and monitoring, sometimes we see it from a different perspective. For example, for us, we're looking at waveform information to generate alerts and or monitor it. However, from this perspective, it's alerting and monitoring based on workflows, right? And artifacts of the workflow. So in this case, I would like to dive a little bit more into that. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. I see another great question, if you guys are open to it. What type of custom JSON messages are you seeing at your sites, and how are you handling them?
Yeah, I'm probably the most. I don't know if you've done JSON or you've done it, but I think I'm just now getting into it. I've only done probably one API call and one Fire call, and there's something to be said that still needs to be developed in the product. I agree, because when you get a JSON back, it's a registered object. It's a temporary data. It's not persistent. So when you have to transform that and send it back to a DTL, you have to define your own persistent class to put that data into, to pass that data back. From the product side, I'd like to see something different with that, definitely, so you don't have to do that customization work to do that.
I think at the same time, the ephemeral nature of JSONs, right? Because in the counter case, you'd say, okay, every time a JSON comes in, what if you had a persistent object?
Yeah.
So I think it also goes towards the schema side of it, and having maybe custom templates, which would end up being objects as well. I think it's an interesting question, but well stated.
Yeah, these are great questions. They're not areas of the UI that we have fully addressed, but good questions. I believe these guys will be here all weeks for those types of questions, especially their learning and monitoring. As Carmen mentioned, that's a workflow that we're starting to redesign. So if you have any thoughts, come to the Tech Exchange, come to the UX Lab, or come find us. I believe we have a question for the design process. So we have, how else are you getting feedback from customers in changing these UI features?
So other than doing the interviews and meeting up with people at Ready, we also scan any WRC tickets that have come in. We always are looking at the Ideas portal. Can't guarantee we can address every single thing that gets put in the Ideas portal, but we are definitely always keeping an eye out there. We also have this email, and you can always email us at any time if you have any feedback. If it's something that's straightforward, then we'll take note of it, but if it's something that we might need to follow up more on, then we'll reach out to you.
Okay, great. I think we have time for just one more question, which is going to be for our panelists. Do you feel like our engagements so far have strengthened your user feedback loop with us? I know you've been longtime clients of ours, and you may not have had this level of engagement before. How confident do you feel that we can continue?
I think it definitely has strengthened our relationship. I've been a customer for a long time and been to a lot of these conferences, but we have some staff that hasn't had that opportunity, and having you come on site and actually be able to interact with them was really beneficial for them to be able to feel like their voices are being heard, like they're able to provide some feedback that they're going to now see in that product.
For me, I would like our users to be more involved, but right now I am the portal, so it all comes through me. I love being able to give the feedback. I'm always on the Ideas portal. I'm all over the community, developer community. So that being able to have a sense of community to reach out and being able to get feedback, from what you're doing, whether it's questions, whether it's new development, whether it's giving feedback on things or stuff that you would like to see, I love it.
Yeah, in terms of the feedback loop, it's been grounding. As a professional early in my career, I think it's really important to have something that you can grow with, especially when so much technology is changing rapidly. I think being part of the feedback loop and seeing the kinds of milestones and the thought that goes into the product gives me a lot of confidence that I can trust this product in the long run.
All right. Thank you, everyone. I think those are all our questions. You're off the hook now. We do want to thank you for being part of this project, our panel, and future partnerships in the future. So we do have a few gifts for you. We don't do this often, but I wanted to make sure that you all felt appreciated, because we do appreciate you. While Carmen does the lovely honor, I'll just reiterate that if you don't have time to talk to us for hours or submit requests to us through the multiple avenues like developer community, we do have this email. Even if it's a slight, if it's a question, a feedback, or encouragement, we love that too. This is open for you all. And just going to end with that. And of course, every session is going to have a survey. So if you like the content for this year and want to see more next year, please say, oh, sorry, I'm on the EAP slide. This is the survey. Please say that, please give your feedback on what you liked, what you didn't like. We'll plan for more content next year and update it for all the new progress that we will make. And of course, if you're interested in our EAPs, you can scan this to see what's new. And I also want to iterate the UX lab again. So we've got 2 sessions a day, all in the afternoon. They may be full on the app to sign up. However, if you didn't get a chance to add your name, you can still stop by. We may have a few extra laptops or no shows. So if you are interested, please still stop by during these sessions. And here are other sessions that you may want to attend. Some other sessions you want to attend, including a roadmap session right after this, Al's co-creation workshop, which is unfortunately at the same time. So if you're interested in being a part of the UX feedback loop here at Ready 2026, and it doesn't want to show you the agenda, please attend her session. It's going to be very interactive, and tell us how you imagine using AI and interoperability. And so there are a ton of other great sessions. One that I'll call out is Scott Nathanson, which is the monitoring and learning on Wednesday at 3:30. He's done some really incredible stuff on top of the IRIS productions. We got a chance to look at that, so I can attest. And it's telling me to move on. You guys got to get to your next session. So thank you. We'll be up here for a little bit of time if you have questions we didn't get to. Thank you.